On my wedding day, I was in the dressing room getting ready when my fiancé's assistant suddenly handed me a prenuptial cohabitation agreement. The first clause stated, without explicit permission, the husband is forbidden from kissing any part of the wife's body below her eyebrows. The second, at the wife's discretion, the husband is permitted one, and only one, opportunity for intercourse per month, with each session not to exceed 10 minutes. The third read, at any time in any place, should the wife feel any discomfort, the husband must cease all activities immediately. After reading through over 100 clauses in the agreement, I fought back my rage and called my fiancée. Miss Astor, I said, could you perhaps explain Clause 98 to me? What exactly does it mean that, regardless of the child's paternity, he or she will bear the mother's surname? It's almost embarrassing to admit, but this grand, ostentatious wedding was nothing more than an arranged marriage set up by my grandfather's generation. I had never even met the bride. All I knew was that her family was incredibly influential, and she was a famous socialite in New York's high society. But I never imagined the rules of the elite could be so utterly bizarre. You're just the husband we're bringing into the family. My fiancé's voice dripped with contempt over the phone. Did you really expect the children to take your name? I took a deep breath, my tone firm and unwavering. I'm sorry, Miss Astor, but I will not be signing this agreement. The moment I finished speaking, my fiancé's furious shout erupted from the other end of the line. Listen, Sherman, are you trying to push your luck? She screamed. The fact that I'm willing to marry you is the luckiest thing that will ever happen to you, and you have the nerve to defy me? I was completely stunned. Was this really the caliber of a high society heiress? She was a world away from the gentle and refined woman my grandfather had described. I was about to argue further, but she had already hung up. Witnessing this, the assistant standing next to me shot me a disdainful look and sneered. Mr. Sherman, I suggest you just sign the papers. Otherwise, knowing Miss Astor's temper, your life is going to be very difficult. He saw my youth and my simple attire and clearly didn't think much of me. An agreement this humiliating? Anyone who wants to sign it can go right ahead, but I absolutely will not. The Sherman family might not be as ostentatiously wealthy as the Astors, but we are by no means a family to be trifled with. So what if she's a New York princess? If it comes down to it, I'll just call off the wedding today. With that, I took off my tuxedo jacket and turned to leave, only to be blocked by the assistant. The ceremony is about to begin, Mr. Sherman. Where do you think you're going? I clenched my fists, my eyes locked on him. My legs are my own. I'll go wherever I please. What business is it of yours? My warning didn't faze him. In fact, he became even more insolent. Mr. Sherman, I strongly advise you to put that jacket back on, he said, giving me a shove. If you disrupt this wedding, you won't be able to handle the consequences. His eyes were filled with menace. Ever since I entered the military academy at 18, I've trained day and night under the toughest instructors. The pride etched into my very being would not allow me to back down. Seeing his Xiaozhong attitude, my own anger began to boil over. And what if I decide to leave anyway? As soon as I said it, the staff in the dressing room gasped. My God, this guy has some nerve, talking back to Mr. Wallace like that. He must not plan on having a future in this city. It's just a prenup. What's the big deal? If he offends Miss Astor over this, he's the only one who's going to lose out, another person whispered. Exactly. Marrying into the Astor family is a dream for every guy in New York. Who cares what last name the kids have? As the murmurs grew, Mr. Wallace's expression became increasingly smug. You hear that? He sneered. And nobody like you, with no power and no connections, wants to talk about dignity? Are you out of your mind? I didn't care about their mockery. In fact, I found it almost amusing. In New York, the Astors were certainly a powerhouse, with unimaginable wealth. But compared to the legacy of my family, the Shermans, they were nothing. All the money in the world is just a cold number in the face of true power. Mr. Wallace, I'm warning you one last time, I said, my voice low. Get out of my way, or you will regret it. Perhaps startled by the sudden intensity in my demeanor, Mr. Wallace froze, momentarily at a loss. Fine, you little punk, he stammered. You dare to threaten me? I'm calling Miss Astor right now. I held up my hands in a gesture of indifference. Be my guest. A moment later, the dressing room door was kicked open. A tall, striking young woman, flanked by a retinue of bodyguards, strode in. Wallace, you're my personal assistant. How can you not even handle something this simple? So you're Diana Astor, my fiancée? I studied the woman before me. I had to admit, she was beautiful. She was tall, nearly 5'7", and the white wedding gown she wore perfectly accentuated her flawless figure. If there was any flaw, it was the icy coldness in her eyes as she looked at me. Miss Astor, It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Allow me to introduce myself, I began. My name is Frank Sherman, and I'm with the U.S. Army. That's enough. Diana cut me off with an impatient wave of her hand. I have absolutely no interest in who you are. I had intended to mention my family, hoping it might make her reconsider her tone, but this insufferably arrogant woman wouldn't even let me finish a sentence. It was clear from her expression that she saw me as nothing more than a gold digger, a pretty face after the Astor fortune. Miss Astor, I understand we've never met and that this marriage was our parents' idea, I said calmly. But to not even allow me to finish a sentence, isn't that a bit disrespectful? At my words, her expression soured instantly. Respect? She scoffed. Sherman, why don't you go take a good long look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're someone worthy of my respect? She shot me a look of pure disdain. Let me be perfectly clear. If my father wasn't forcing me into this, I wouldn't even waste a single glance on a pathetic gold digger like you. Raising her voice to address the entire room, she continued. And don't you dare think that after this ceremony, you'll be a part of the Astor family. Without my explicit permission, you will not lay a single finger on me. I stared at her, my voice flat and emotionless. Since you're so opposed to marrying me, Miss Astor, why put yourself through this? Then I changed my tack. Why don't we just cancel the wedding? It will be better for both of us. I was trying to end things peacefully, but this arrogant woman was incapable of listening. She seemed to think I was provoking her. You loser. Don't you dare try to play hard to get with me, she snapped. Do you have any idea how many men in this city are dying to marry me? I couldn't help but laugh. Miss Astor, I don't care what other men think. I simply believe that you and I are not a good match. As for your father, I will explain the situation to him myself. You don't need to worry. After our exchange, the dressing room erupted in shocked whispers. Oh my God, is this guy crazy? He's actually turning down a marriage into the Astor family. I know, right? Miss Astor is the woman every man in New York dreams of, and this fool doesn't appreciate his luck, someone else added. If I were him, marrying the Astor heiress, I'd be pinching myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The chorus of disbelief around me grew, but I paid it no mind. In our circles, marriage isn't about status or wealth. It's about compatibility. And it was painfully obvious that this condescending New York socialite was not for me. I could still vividly recall the sight of Diana's father, the chairman of the Astor Corporation, bowing and scraping before my grandfather. In less than 30 minutes, Mr. Astor's white shirt was soaked through with sweat, terrified he might say the wrong thing. He probably had no idea that the powerful alliance he had begged for was being single-handedly destroyed by his own daughter. Sherman, I'm asking you one last time. Diana's voice was sharp. Are you serious about calling this off? I slowly lifted my head to meet her gaze, my own eyes unwavering. Absolutely. The room fell deathly silent. Diana probably never imagined in her wildest dreams that I would walk away from the chance to marry into her family. Her face turned crimson. Just as she was fumbling for a response, Mr. Wallace, the assistant, stepped forward. Don't worry, Miss Astor, he said smoothly. You're better off without a useless gold digger like him anyway. Diana nodded slightly, though her eyes were filled with hesitation. But the invitations have all been sent. If we cancel the wedding now, how will I ever show my face in public again? Mr. Wallace shot me a malicious glance. Miss Astor, do you remember Nate Blackwood from the Blackwood Group? In an instant, Diana's eyes lit up with a new sparkle. Wallace, are you suggesting? She began. Mr. Wallace nodded eagerly, his face alight with excitement. The Blackwood Group just closed a massive Series B funding round on Wall Street. As the sole heir, Nate's net worth is in the tens of billions, and the Astors have been looking to expand into overseas markets. This is the perfect opportunity. Diana lowered her head, a blush creeping up her neck. But would he be willing to marry me? Mr. Wallace puffed out his chest confidently. Of course he would, he declared. I just got word. Nate Blackwood is on his way here right now. Watching this unfold, it all clicked into place. The ridiculous prenuptial agreement was almost certainly Wallace's idea. His real goal was to broker a partnership between the Blackwood Group and the Astor family. The poor Astor heiress didn't even realize she was being played. All right, that's enough, I interjected. Miss Astor, even though our engagement is off, don't you think swapping grooms at the last minute is a bit inappropriate? I pointed at the assistant standing beside her. Right now, I only want to know one thing. Who came up with that agreement? From what little I knew of Diana, she was arrogant, but I doubted she was clever enough to devise such a scheme. There had to be more to it. Her expression confirmed my suspicions as her eyes darted nervously toward Wallace. What does it matter whose idea it was? She snapped. It has nothing to do with you anymore. A man of his word, I believe you said. Are you trying to take it back now? I raised an eyebrow and let out a cold laugh. I'm not taking anything back. I just think someone has been deliberately trying to drive a wedge between Miss Astor and me. I turned my gaze to Mr. Wallace. Miss Astor, doesn't it feel like this whole situation has been orchestrated? I was trying to give her a way out for her father's sake, but she refused to see it. Sherman, I'm warning you. Stop trying to cause trouble, she retorted. Weren't you the one so eager to call things off? Having second thoughts already. Hearing her say that, I felt a pang of disappointment. The Astor family had been titans of industry for generations. How had they produced such a clueless daughter? You heard her, kid. You're not welcome here. Get out, Mr. Wallace said, staring at me with a provocative smirk. I just smiled. The show's over, Wallace. You've achieved your goal. Is there any need to keep up the act? The ceremony is about to start. Isn't it time for your real boss to make an appearance? The words had barely left my mouth when the dressing room door swung open again. A man around my age swaggered in. Diana, my dear, will you marry me? He asked. Nate, you're finally here, Wallace exclaimed. The entire room rose to their feet to welcome the heir to the Blackwood Group. So, you must be Wallace's real boss, I said, looking him over. The man they called Nate approached me with an arrogant swagger. I'll give you this, kid, he said. You're not as dumb as you look. But sometimes, it's not a good thing to be too clever. His tone was even more arrogant than Wallace's. I gave him a single, cold glance before looking away. If I'm not mistaken, you've been waiting for this day for a long time, haven't you, Nate? I asked. He nodded, a look of mock pity on his face. Mr. Sherman, I hear you refused to sign the agreement. What a shame, he said, lighting a cigarette and holding it between his fingers, a smirk playing on his lips. You just threw away your one and only shot at marrying into real money. I remained completely unfazed. In fact, I smiled, feeling a sense of relief. If this is what it's like, it's a world I'm better off not entering. My nonchalance seemed to surprise him. You're not angry at all, Sherman? He pressed. I just stole your fiancée. I just waved a dismissive hand, a faint smile still on my face. What's there to be angry about? I replied. Frankly, I should be thanking you, Nate. If you hadn't stepped in, I'm not sure how I would have explained this to Mr. Astor. After a few more exchanges, it was clear I had the upper hand. The great Blackwood heir's face turned pale with rage, his composure finally cracking. Then what the hell are you still doing here? Get out before I have someone remove you permanently. A small smile touched my lips as I calmly held up a hand. Not so fast, Nate. Before I go, I just need to make a quick call to my grandfather. Then, in front of everyone, I pulled out my phone. Hello, Grandpa. It's Frank, I said. Hearing my voice, he chuckled on the other end. Frank, my boy, why are you calling me now? Have you met your bride-to-be? Are you happy with her? I glanced meaningfully at Diana, then let out a cold laugh. Grandpa, that's actually why I'm calling. Your future granddaughter-in-law has just been stolen. The moment the words left my mouth, a deafening roar erupted from the other end of the line. You said what? My grandfather's shock was so palpable it felt like it was coming through the phone itself. I arranged that marriage personally. Are you absolutely certain you're not joking with me? At that moment, my own fury peaked. Grandpa, I would never joke about something like this, I said. And the man who did it also threatened to have me killed. I quickly recounted the events of the last hour, and I could hear my grandfather slam something down in anger. Tell me who it is. Just as I was about to answer, Wallace snatched the phone from my hand. Hello, you're this kid's grandfather, right? Nate Blackwood and Miss Astor are the ones who are a perfect match. Your grandson isn't fit to shine Nate's shoes, you understand? My grandfather, who had likely never been spoken to that way in his entire life, was silent for a few seconds. Nate who? I've never heard of him, my grandfather's voice boomed. Wallace, still oblivious, continued his arrogant charade. Nate Blackwood, the heir to the Blackwood Group. Now you're scared? Huh, he taunted. Even through the phone, I could feel the sheer force of my grandfather's rage. A piddling little company like the Blackwood Group dares to interfere with my grandson's marriage? Who gave him the nerve? Wallace was clearly taken aback by my grandfather's temper, but he foolishly doubled down. Listen here, old man. Have you been living under a rock? The Blackwood Group is one of the most powerful families in New York, a Fortune 500 company. Are you sure you want to make an enemy of them? After hanging up, Wallace turned to his boss with a triumphant smirk, as if expecting a reward. Seeing this, I couldn't contain myself any longer and burst out laughing. I have to hand it to you, Nate, I said. You've certainly hired a one-of-a-kind assistant. I don't think I've ever met anyone quite so brave. My sarcastic warning went completely over Wallace's head. All right, kid. You made your call. Now get out, he snapped. I just smiled. You can try to kick me out, but I don't think you're prepared for the consequences. Just then, someone in the crowd exclaimed, Chairman Astor is here. At the announcement, everyone straightened up and stood respectfully to the side. The man hurrying into the room was none other than my would-be father-in-law, Mr. Astor, the current chairman of the Astor Corporation. He practically ran to my side and gave a deep bow. "Mr. Sherman, my apologies. I hope I'm not too late." I quickly helped him straighten up. "Mr. Astor, there's no need for such formalities. Besides, as of half an hour ago, your daughter and I are no longer engaged." Before Mr. Astor could process my words, his daughter stepped forward. "This is all your fault, Sherman," she declared. "None of this would have happened if you had just signed the agreement." I looked at her, my voice cold. "Miss Astor, for someone from such a prominent family, you can be remarkably dense. It's obvious that someone orchestrated this to sabotage our marriage for their own gain." But even with the truth laid bare, she refused to suspect Wallace. "I'm warning you, Sherman, stop trying to turn people against each other," she insisted. "The only reason I ever agreed to marry you was for my father. Now that Nate is back, I obviously have a much better option." I couldn't help but laugh at her words. "Miss Astor, while I may have ended our engagement, it hasn't been formally dissolved by our families. And by the terms of our family's agreement, what you're doing right now could be considered infidelity." This time, before Diana could respond, Nate stepped forward. "Infidelity, whatever. You're just trying to shake us down for money, aren't you? Name your price. I've got more money than I know what to do with." I looked at this arrogant, clueless air as if he were a clown. "Nate, don't say I didn't warn you. Even with the entire Blackwood group at your back, you can't afford to make an enemy of me." The moment I said it, Diana bristled. "Stop trying to scare us, Sherman. You're nothing but a kept man my father hired to look after me," she sneered. "If you were so powerful, you'd at least have a real job." I was momentarily speechless. No job? The truth was, my work required a security clearance so high that it was invisible to public record. Mr. Astor must have known this, and, for security reasons, kept my true identity from his daughter. Seizing the opportunity, Wallace fanned the flames. "You all heard her. This guy is nothing but a pretty face, completely useless." Another sycophant chimed in. "Exactly. Our Nate is the heir to the Blackwood fortune. He's in a completely different league from this loser. If the Astors and the Blackwoods were to merge, they'd be at the top of the Forbes list in no time." The crowd continued to flatter Nate, while not a single person spoke a word in my defense. It seemed that in their world, everything was about profit and transactions. Morals and principles were irrelevant. "Miss Astor," I said, turning to her, "you want to marry into the Blackwood family, don't you? Today, I can grant you that wish." At my words, Mr. Astor broke out in a cold sweat. "Nonsense. This is absolute nonsense," he stammered. "Mr. Sherman, my daughter is young and foolish. Please don't take her words to heart." Hearing this, Nate immediately stepped forward. "Mr. Astor, it's me, Nate. You used to hold me when I was a boy. Don't you remember?" he said earnestly. "I truly love your daughter. Please, give us your blessing." Mr. Astor, clearly stunned that someone was actually trying to crash the wedding, was at a loss for words. I appreciate the Blackwood family sentiment," he finally managed, "but my daughter is promised to Mr. Sherman." Nate, still oblivious to my identity, maintained his arrogant posture. "Mr. Astor, I'm sure you're well aware of what the Blackwood family's resources could mean for you," he said, his voice laced with a veiled threat. "I'd advise you to think very carefully before you burn any bridges." Despite Nate's blatant threat, Diana looked at him with pure adoration. "Dad, please just say yes," she pleaded. "I can tell he's being sincere." Nate, clearly reveling in the attention, pulled a credit card from his wallet and tossed it on the table in front of me. "There's $10 million on this card. It should be enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life." This move only confirmed what I already suspected. Everything that had happened today was part of his plan. He had Wallace provoke me with the agreement, drive a wedge between me and Diana, and then swoop in to force my hand. For a man like that, I would show no mercy. "Keep your money," I said flatly. If I wanted money, I could have as much as I pleased. Diana's eyes flashed with annoyance at my blunt refusal. "What's that supposed to mean, Sherman?" I looked up at her, my voice now completely devoid of emotion. "It means nothing. I just find it astonishing how foolish some people can be." Diana's face flushed with anger at my insult. "We offer you money, you refuse. What is it you want?" she demanded. I pulled up a chair, sat down directly opposite them, and said in a voice as cold as ice, "I want every single one of you to pay the price." At my declaration, Mr. Astor broke out in a fresh cold sweat. Before he could speak, I held up a hand to silence him. "Mr. Astor, I trust you heard everything your daughter just said. If I don't respond to such insults, people might start to think the Sherman family is an easy target." Before the words were even out of my mouth, Nate, standing beside Diana, let out a derisive laugh. What? Did I hear that correctly? You're gonna make me pay. Do you have any idea who I am, kid? They call me the king of Uptown for a reason. At his words, the room erupted in laughter once more. I let them laugh. It wouldn't be long before they were all silent. Nate, taking my silence for fear, pulled Diana into his arms possessively. I'm going to give you two choices, kid, he said. You can either crawl out of here on your knees, or I can have my men carry you out. At that, I laughed. The king of Uptown, is it? You and that lapdog assistant of yours are equally clueless. You don't even realize who you're dealing with. Nate was about to explode, but Wallace stepped in front of him. You little piece of trash, open your eyes and see who you're talking to, he spat. Nate Blackwood is the heir to one of the most powerful families in New York. I dare you to lay a finger on him. Wallace grew more agitated, spittle flying from his mouth. I shoved him aside and pulled out my phone again, making a brief call. All right, send him in. After hanging up, I glanced at the clock on the wall and began to count silently. I hadn't even reached 10 when the doors were thrown open again. This time, dozens of armed men in dark suits swarmed in, securing the entire room. Their leader was a stern-faced man in a tailored suit, a man whose face was often on the news. Wallace quickly straightened his tie and scurried over, his face a mask of sycophantic greeting. Director Jennings, what brings you here? Are you perhaps here to welcome Mr. Blackwood? At the mention of the director's name, a hush fell over the room, and everyone's expression shifted. Diana shrank back into Nate's arms. I alone remained seated, calmly tapping my fingers on the tabletop. The man, Director Jennings, scanned the room until his eyes landed on me. His professional demeanor immediately shifted to one of concern. Mr. Sherman, he said, rushing over. Are you unharmed? I smiled and gestured toward the utterly bewildered Wallace. I'm fine for the moment, but he might not be. Before Wallace could even process what was happening, two of the director's men had him pinned to the floor. Director Jennings, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Wallace sputtered from the floor. I'm with Nate Blackwood. You can't do this to me. Hearing his name, Nate had no choice but to step forward. Director Jennings, my father speaks of you often. As a favor to him, could you please release my assistant? He said, trying to sound reasonable. Whatever the issue is, I'm sure we can discuss it calmly. Director Jennings didn't even grant him a glance. He simply waved his hand. Take him away. The entire operation, from the moment they entered to the moment Wallace was dragged out, took less than a minute. The room was left in a state of stunned silence. What just happened? Someone whispered. Who were those men? Why were they armed? And Nate mentioned his father. Why didn't that work? Another asked. To be able to summon federal agents with a single phone call. That Astor's son-in-law is clearly not who we thought he was. Nate, publicly humiliated, glared at me with pure hatred. You dare to have my man arrested right in front of me? Are you declaring war on the Blackwood family? I looked back at him, a ghost of a smile on my face. Nate, that was just the appetizer, I said softly. The main course is just beginning. My grandfather had taught me long ago how to deal with spoiled bullies like Nate Blackwood. You don't reason with them. You meet their aggression with overwhelming force. It doesn't matter who their father is. You strike first. I rose from my chair and drove my foot squarely into his chest. With a sharp cry of pain, the once arrogant Nate Blackwood flew backward several feet. He collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. You actually hit me, he wheezed. The Blackwoods will destroy you for this. Oh, I said, feigning surprise. Is that a threat? I calmly took out my phone and held it out to him. Don't say I'm not a nice guy. Here, call for backup. Nate's face was pale, but he took the phone and dialed a number. Hello, Mark? It's Nate. I need you to run a background check on someone for me. Yes, he's from New York. The last name is Sherman. Hello, Mark? Are you there? I could hear the man on the other end of the line shouting. Damn it, Nate. Who the hell did you piss off? This guy's file is classified. Are you trying to get me thrown in a federal prison? I was laughing uncontrollably. Nate shot me a venomous look and quickly dialed another number. Hello, Mr. Davis. It's Nate Blackwood. How have you been, sir? He spent a full minute on pleasantries before finally getting to the point. Sir, the thing is, I've run into a bit of a situation here in the city, and I was hoping you might be able to help. Who are you up against? The voice on the other end asked. All I know is his last name is Sherman. There was a pause. Hello, Mr. Davis? Are you still there? The line went dead. Cold sweat was now beating on Nate's forehead. With a trembling hand, he dialed a third number. Dad, I'm in trouble. You have to help me. He was on the phone with his father now, his voice shaking. I already had him checked out. All anyone knows is that his name is Sherman. Everything else is sealed. You absolute fool. His father's roar echoed from the phone for everyone to hear. You apologize to Mr. Sherman right now? And if he doesn't forgive you, don't even think about coming home. After the call ended, Nate just stared at his phone, dumbfounded. I cleared my throat. Well, Nate, did you find out what you wanted to know? Do you understand who I am now? He looked up, his body trembling. Mr. Sherman, he stammered. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was blind and arrogant. Please, I'm begging you, forgive me. The entire room was stunned into silence by Nate's sudden reversal. What's going on? For Nate Blackwood to act like that, this Sherman's family must be more powerful than any of the big New York families. You heard his father on the phone, right? That was the chairman of the Blackwood Group himself. Even he can't protect his son from this guy, another person whispered. No wonder the Astors were so set on this marriage. They knew all along. My gaze swept across the room. Let me be clear, I said slowly, my voice carrying to every corner. Today, anyone and everyone associated with the Blackwood family will be held accountable. My words landed like a bombshell. A few people in the crowd looked faint. One moment, I was the pathetic son-in-law being cast aside by the Astors. The next, I was a figure so powerful that even the mighty Blackwoods were terrified of me. And the person with the most regret in the room was, of course, my former fiancée, Diana. She turned a trembling face to her father. Dad, she whispered, who is he? Mr. Astor slapped his own thigh in frustration, his face a mask of pure disappointment. Diana, how could I have raised such a fool? He lamented. I'll let you get away with so much. I turn a blind eye to your antics, but today of all days, you had to defy me. This marriage was the opportunity of a lifetime, and you threw it all away. He grew more and more agitated, practically shaking with rage. And he was right to be scared. If I were a crueler man, the Astor family would be facing the same fate as the Blackwoods. After her father's tirade, the reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on Diana. Dad, she whispered, horrified. Are you saying his family is more powerful than any of the major families in New York? Now, every person in the room looked at me with a newfound and profound sense of awe. You should be grateful, Miss Astor, that your insults didn't go any further, I said, my voice low. Otherwise, the Astor family name would cease to exist in this city. The sharp crack of a slap echoed through the room. A bright red handprint bloomed on Diana's cheek. She looked at her father, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. Dad, why did you hit me? Do you think you bear no responsibility for this mess? She cried. If you had just told me who he was, I never would have. Before she could finish, her father slapped her again. You insolent girl. You dare to blame me? He roared. Do you have any idea what would happen if Mr. Sherman's true identity were to be leaked? None of us in this room would be safe. At his words, everyone in the room lowered their heads, trying to make themselves invisible. As for Nate Blackwood, the cause of all this, he was now a trembling heap on the floor. Mr. Sherman, he whimpered, it was all a misunderstanding. Oh, you think this was just a misunderstanding? I asked, looking down at him. You conspire to humiliate me, to sabotage my marriage, all for your own gain. How do you propose we settle that account? The great heir to the Blackwood Group actually wet himself in fear. Just then, Diana, who had been silent, fell to her knees before me. Mr. Sherman, she sobbed. I know I was wrong. I was so blind. I completely underestimated you. Please, she begged. Can we just let the wedding continue? We can pretend the whole thing was just a bad joke. A cold smile touched my lips. A joke, I said, but I was being perfectly serious. My words struck her like a physical blow, and she fell silent. Seeing his daughter's despair, Mr. Astor could only sigh in resignation. The room was deathly quiet, everyone waiting to see what I would do to this unfortunate pair. After a long moment, I turned to the defeated-looking Mr. Astor and sighed. Mr. Astor, out of respect for my grandfather, I am prepared to show the Astor family mercy, I said. But on one condition. Hearing this, a flicker of hope appeared in Mr. Astor's eyes. Mr. Sherman, please, what is it? He asked desperately. I'll do anything you ask. Just please spare my family. I gestured toward his tear-streaked daughter. I'm sure you've heard the expression, Mr. Astor. The person who created the problem must be the one to solve it. As I spoke, Diana's face paled. What are you trying to say, Sherman? She demanded. Are you telling my father to disown me? To throw me out? I spread my hands, a wry smile on my face. Didn't you say you have a line of suitors stretching all the way to Paris, Miss Astor? I asked. I'm just curious to see how many of them will still be around when you're no longer the Astor heiress. I directed my last words pointedly at her father. It was a clear statement of my terms, but it was also a lifeline for his family. After a moment's hesitation, Mr. Astor gave me a solemn nod. Mr. Sherman, it will be as you say. I will call a press conference tomorrow in my capacity as head of the Astor family, and I will publicly announce, he said, his voice heavy, that I am disowning my daughter, Diana. Diana looked like she wanted to protest, to scream, but it was too late. There was nothing she could say. She had started this fire, and now she would be the one to put it out. As for Nate Blackwood, the catalyst for the whole affair, he was escorted away by director Jennings's men. Not long after, news of the Blackwood Group's sudden and total bankruptcy shocked all of New York.